Listen closely. This is your moment, not next month. Not after one more apology, one more sacrifice, one more time you shrink to make someone else comfortable. Right now. Because 2026 isn't arriving quietly. It's knocking with a question that demands an answer. Are you finally going to choose yourself? I want to tell you something we're rarely taught. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's not cold. It's not a betrayal of love or loyalty. Choosing yourself is an act of courage. And courage has always been uncomfortable. For years, you've been told to be grateful, to be agreeable, to be the strong one who absorbs the weight so others don't have to feel it. You learned how to stay quiet when something hurt. You learned how to explain away behavior that broke your spirit. You learned how to survive, yes, but survival is not the same as living. 2026 is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming truer to your limits, truer to your values, truer to the quiet voice inside you that's been whispering, this isn't who I am anymore. You don't need a dramatic ending to last year. You don't need closure wrapped in kindness. What you need is permission. And I'm telling you right now, you don't need anyone else to give it to you. This is the year you stop negotiating your worth. The year you stop proving your goodness through exhaustion. The year you stop calling self-abandonment love. Choosing yourself will cost you old patterns, familiar pain, and people who benefited from you staying small. But what it gives you back is everything: your breath, your clarity, your dignity. 2026 begins the moment you decide, I matter too. If you're honest with yourself, you already know where you've been abandoning you. You feel it in your body before you can name it with words. That tightness in your chest when you say yes, but mean no. That exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix. That quiet resentment you carry because you keep showing up for people who don't truly see you. This didn't happen overnight. You were taught that love means endurance. That being needed is the same as being valued. That if you just try harder, stay kinder, bend a little more, you'll finally feel secure. But here's the truth we avoid because it's terrifying. Betraying yourself slowly feels safer than risking rejection all at once. So you learn to disappear in small ways. You soften your voice. You edited your truth. You stayed in rooms where your soul felt unwelcome because leaving felt like failure. And every time you did that, you told yourself a story that you were being mature, selfless, strong. But strength that costs you your authenticity is not strength. It's armor. And armor gets heavy. 2026 is asking you to put it down, not in a dramatic way, in a brave, honest, everyday way, by pausing before you agree, by noticing when your body tightens instead of relaxes, by telling the truth even when your voice shakes. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop disappearing. It means you learn the difference between compassion and self-erasure. You're not broken for feeling tired. You're tired because you've been carrying what was never yours to hold alone. This year is about reclaiming your energy, about recognizing that boundaries are not walls. They're bridges to relationships that are actually safe. And yes, some people will be confused when you change. Let them be. Confusion is often the first sign that growth is happening. Choosing yourself begins with this simple, radical question: what do I need right now? There's a quiet grief that comes with choosing yourself, and we don't talk about it enough. It's the grief of realizing how long you waited. The grief of seeing all the moments you silenced your truth to keep the peace. The grief of understanding that some of the pain you carry wasn't caused by cruelty. It was caused by your own self-abandonment. And that realization can sting more than any betrayal because it asks you to sit with responsibility instead of blame. But listen to me. This grief is not a punishment. It's a passage. You cannot step into 2026 whole without mourning the versions of you who survived instead of lived. Feel that sadness. Let it move through you instead of hardening into shame. Shame says, I should have known better. Courage says, I did the best I could with what I knew then. And compassion, real compassion, begins when you stop judging your past self through the lens of your present awareness. Choosing yourself means allowing your heart to break open, not shut down. It means acknowledging that some people only loved the version of you that functioned, and stayed silent. And when you stop doing that, the relationship changes or ends. That's not failure. That's information. It tells you where love was conditional and where it was real. In 2026, you stop chasing relationships that require you to abandon your integrity. You stop negotiating your values for belonging. Because belonging that demands self-betrayal is not belonging, it's captivity. Real connection doesn't ask you to disappear. It asks you to arrive as you are, imperfect, honest, and whole. This year, you let yourself feel the loss without letting it define you. You learn that grief and growth can coexist, that endings can be clean even when they hurt, and that choosing yourself is not about becoming alone, it's about becoming aligned. Alignment is peaceful. Alignment is powerful, and it begins the moment you stop running from the truth you already know. Let's talk about boundaries, because so many people misunderstand them. Boundaries are not punishments. They're not ultimatums. They're not a way to control other people's behavior. Boundaries are simply the distance at which you can love someone and still respect yourself. And if you've never been taught that, it makes sense why saying no feels cruel, why asking for space feels like rejection, why protecting your energy feels like you're doing something wrong. You learned early that being easy made you lovable, that being flexible kept the peace, that if you didn't ask for too much, you wouldn't be left. So you overextended, overexplained, and overgave, hoping someone would notice how much it cost you. But here's the hard truth. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will resist them the most, not because you're wrong, but because the rules of the relationship have changed. In 2026, you stop explaining your boundaries like a defense lawyer. You stop apologizing for having limits. You stop shrinking your needs to make them easier to swallow. A boundary doesn't need justification to be valid. This doesn't work for me is enough. I need rest is enough. I'm not available for this anymore is enough. And yes, setting boundaries may cost you access to people who are comfortable with your silence. Let them go. Anyone who truly cares about you will want you well, not worn down. Boundaries don't push away the right people. They filter out the ones who only showed up when you had nothing left. This is the year you learn that self-respect is not loud. It's consistent. It shows up every time you choose honesty over harmony, every time you protect your peace instead of performing strength. Boundaries are not walls. They are the foundation of a life where you no longer have to recover from the people you love. Choosing yourself in 2026 means getting honest about your patterns, not with judgment, but with curiosity. You have patterns in how you love, how you work, how you stay, and how you leave. And patterns don't come from nowhere. They are learned responses to environments where you had to adapt to survive. So if you keep overachieving, or overthinking, it's not because you're weak. It's because at some point, those behaviors kept you safe. But what once protected you may now be imprisoning you. The coping strategies that helped you belong may now be costing you your peace. And growth begins the moment you stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what happened to me? That question opens the door to compassion. And compassion, not criticism, is what actually creates change. In 2026, you stop romanticizing self-sacrifice. You stop calling burnout dedication. You stop confusing chaos with passion. You recognize that love doesn't require you to earn your place through pain. Healthy relationships don't keep score of how much you've endured. They offer reciprocity, safety, and repair. This year, you practice responding instead of reacting. You pause before you jump into fix, rescue, or explain. You let discomfort be a teacher instead of a threat, because discomfort is often the signal that you're doing something new, and new doesn't feel safe at first. Choosing yourself means breaking cycles quietly. No announcements, no dramatic exits, just consistent, grounded decisions that align with who you are becoming. And some days, choosing yourself will look small, like resting when you feel guilty or staying silent instead of over-explaining. But small choices, repeated daily, become a radically different life. You're not here to repeat old stories. You're here to write new ones, stories where your well-being is not an afterthought, but the foundation. There will be moments in 2026 when choosing yourself feels lonely. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're no longer surrounded by the noise that once distracted you from your own voice. When you stop overgiving, the calls slow down. When you stop rescuing, the emergencies disappear. When you stop performing strength, you see clearly who was attached to you and who was attached to what you provided. This is the part where many people turn back. They confuse loneliness with regret. They mistake the absence of chaos for emptiness. But what you're actually experiencing is space. Space to breathe, space to feel, space to hear yourself think, and space can be unsettling when you've spent years in survival mode. In 2026, you learn to sit with yourself without numbing, without rushing, without filling every quiet moment with productivity or people. You begin to understand that solitude is not abandonment. It's recalibration. It's where you reconnect with your values instead of reacting to everyone else's expectations. It's where you remember what brings you joy when no one is watching. Choosing yourself means becoming your own safe place. It means trusting that you can hold your emotions without collapsing under them. And yes, there will be days when you miss the familiar, even if the familiar hurt you. That doesn't mean you should go back. It means you're human. This year, you stop outsourcing your worth. You stop looking for constant validation to confirm that you're okay. You learn that confidence is quiet and self. Trust is built in moments no one applauds. Loneliness doesn't mean you're failing. Often, it means you're growing beyond environments that could no longer contain you. Stay here. Stay present. The clarity you're seeking doesn't arrive in noise. It arrives in stillness. As you choose yourself, something unexpected begins to happen. You become more honest, not just with others, but with yourself. You stop pretending you're okay when you're not. You stop forcing gratitude to cover unhealed pain. You allow your truth to exist without rushing to fix it, and that kind of honesty is disruptive because it changes how you show up in the world. In 2026, you stop using silence as a survival strategy. You learn that speaking your truth doesn't make you difficult. It makes you real. And realness is the birthplace of trust. When you finally say what you need, what you feel, what you will no longer accept, some people will lean in closer. Others will step away. Both responses are information. Neither is a verdict on your worth. Choosing yourself doesn't mean you become harsh or closed off. It means you become clear. Clear about your values. Clear about your capacity. Clear about what aligns with the life you're building. Clarity may feel confrontational to people who benefited from your confusion. Let that be their work, not yours. This year, you practice courageous conversations, not to win, but to be aligned. You listen without abandoning yourself. You express without attacking. You stand your ground without hardening your heart. That balance is not easy. It requires vulnerability, presence, and self-trust. But it is how relationships evolve instead of erode. And here's the deeper truth. Every time you choose honesty over comfort, you teach people how to treat you. You model what self-respect looks like without saying a word. You show that love can be kind and firm at the same time. 2026 is the year your voice stops shaking, not because you're fearless, but because you're no longer willing to betray yourself to keep the peace. Choosing yourself in 2026 will ask you to redefine love, not as intensity, not as sacrifice, not as how much you can tolerate before you break, but as safety, as presence, as mutual care. You'll begin to notice how your body responds around different people, where you feel grounded, where you feel guarded, where you feel like you can exhale. Your body has always known what your mind tried to rationalize away. This year, you stop chasing potential and start honoring patterns. You stop falling in love with who someone could be and start paying attention to who they consistently are, because consistency is love's quiet language. It doesn't shout. It shows up, and you no longer confuse emotional unpredictability with depth. Peace becomes attractive. Reliability becomes romantic. Respect becomes non-negotiable. Choosing yourself means you no longer stay where you have to beg for understanding, effort, or basic kindness. You recognize that real love does not require you to convince someone of your value. It meets you where you are, not where you promised to be someday. And when you finally experience that kind of connection, whether with a partner, a friend, or yourself, you realize how much unnecessary pain you once normalized. In 2026, you allow relationships to be mirrors, not battlegrounds. You let them reflect your growth instead of test your endurance. You release the belief that love must hurt to be real. Love can be deep and still be gentle. It can challenge you without diminishing you. And perhaps the most powerful shift of all, you stop abandoning yourself in the name of connection. You learn that the longest, most important relationship you will ever have is the one with yourself. And when that relationship becomes grounded, honest, and kind, everything else begins to align around it. By the time you reach the end of 2026, you'll realize this year was never about becoming a new person. It was about remembering who you were before the world taught you to doubt yourself, before you learned to earn love through performance, before you mistook exhaustion for purpose. Choosing yourself didn't change your essence, it revealed it. You'll notice how your nervous system feels calmer, how your decisions come from clarity instead of fear, how you no longer rush to explain your choices to people who aren't living your life. That urgency to be understood by everyone fades, replaced by a quiet confidence rooted in self-trust. And self-trust is built one brave decision at a time. In 2026, you learned that healing is not linear. Some days you felt powerful. Other days you felt tender, unsure, and human. But instead of shaming yourself for the hard days, you stayed. You didn't abandon yourself when things got uncomfortable. That alone is a radical act of love. You also learned discernment, the ability to choose where your energy goes without guilt. You stopped chasing closure and started choosing peace. You realized that not every ending needs a conversation and not every silence needs an explanation. Sometimes the most self-respecting response is simply to move forward. This year taught you that strength doesn't always look like pushing through. Sometimes it looks like resting, like asking for help, like walking away from what no longer aligns, even when your heart aches. And through all of it, you stayed connected to your values. You stopped living on autopilot and started living with intention. As 2026 unfolds, you stand differently, not louder, not harder, just more rooted, more honest, more you. And that is the kind of growth no one can take away from you. This is how 2026 ends, not with applause, not with perfection, but with truth. You look back and realize the bravest thing you did was stop abandoning yourself. You didn't wait until you were fearless. You chose yourself while your hands were still shaking, while your heart was still tender, while the outcome was still uncertain. And that changed everything. You learned that choosing yourself doesn't mean you never fall. It means you don't stay down out of shame. It means you meet your mistakes with accountability instead of cruelty. It means you extend to yourself the grace you so freely gave to everyone else. In doing so, you rewrote the story of what strength looks like in your life. 2026 became the year you stopped asking for permission to take up space. The year you honored your limits as wisdom, not weakness. The year you trusted that walking away from what hurts is not failure, it's self-respect. You didn't harden, you softened, and that softness became your power. You no longer measure your worth by how much you endure, how much you give, or how much you're needed. You measure it by how aligned you feel when you lay your head down at night, by how often you tell the truth, by how deeply you respect yourself, even when no one is watching. And here is the ending that matters most. You chose yourself, not once, but again and again, in small moments, in quiet decisions, in ways no one may ever applaud, but that your soul will always remember. Welcome to the life that begins when you finally choose you.